Straight talk from Israel. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Well, today we're going to be talking about your medical rights and your inalienable rights. Your medical rights in that can you and should you be forced to take a vaccine? Should you be forced to wear a mask? What exactly are your rights? What is fair? What is good for society? What is good for you? We're going to be having on today an Israeli attorney who is fighting for medical rights, that they should be clear, that they should be abided by. And we're going to get into more detail of what we're experiencing here in Israel as we are still under our third lockdown, which has now been extended at least until Friday. All right. Also, inalienable rights, I want to talk about that as well. I want to finish up on what I was talking about on my previous show, about how governments can take over your lives and how they do it. And we have rights and we are individuals. We don't have to all conform. We don't have to all think the same. As my wise mother always says, if everybody thought the same, we'd only need one person in this world. We're individuals. We each have our ideas, our flavors, our chemistry, and that is what makes the world go round. That is what is beautiful. Again, I can't urge you enough to go back and read Ayn Rand books, and to go and read books by other authors and that talk about individualism and how special it is, and how we shouldn't muzzle it and we shouldn't force people to all think alike and be one person, because then we would only need one person. All right, we're going to be talking about all of these things in the show. We are live if you're listening on Sunday morning between 7 to 8 a.m. Holy Time, or if it's between midnight to 1 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time, that means that we are live. You can join us in the chat room. It is nice to see everybody there, and feel free to call into the show with any comments or questions. We'll be right back, everybody. Don't go anywhere.
How did a nice Jewish girl from Delaware end up living in Israel? Shalom, I'm Natalie Sapinski. Join me on my show, Returning Home. Meet different people who have moved to Israel. Hear their personal stories, their highs, their lows, and everything in between. Each week, we talk to experts on immigration and the process of moving to Israel. Listen to Returning Home every Thursday, only on Israel News Talk Radio.
Your medical rights and inalienable rights. Our guest today is Dana Kowalski. She's a lawyer that specializes in medical rights. She's fighting with other attorneys the mandatory mask wearing, the vaccination campaign, and medical privacy and medical freedom. She's joining us today on the show to talk about our rights and her fight to make sure that we keep those rights. And you can contact her through Facebook or LinkedIn. You'll see her name written in the or on the page where the show is podcasted later. You can just copy and paste that into Facebook or LinkedIn and find her there. Welcome to the show, Dana Kowalski.
Hello.
It's good to have you on. All right. So you're an Israeli lawyer, an attorney here, and you are fighting for the medical rights. Now, I go out and I see most all people wearing masks when they're out in public. I mean, where's the problem here?
The problem is that it's mandated. The problem is that we have human rights, basic human rights, and those rights, the whole humanity went through a whole ordeal just to establish those rights. Those rights are basically coming from the Nuremberg Code, which then was established by the Helsinki Treaty. And those rights is meaning that every person have the rights on their own body. When you're starting mandating things over people's own bodies, then we have a problem. If you think that this is something that is good for the better good or for the health of everyone, okay, explain. Let people choose. Let people make it by their own consent. This is what informed consent is all about. When you're mandating people to cover their mouth, cover the organs which they're breathing with, this is exceeding what the country can do, what the country can oblige people to do, because this is already hurting the people's basic rights, the basic right to breathe.
Okay, so let me play devil's advocate for a moment, okay, and say that, look, everyone has the right to free speech. However, when it comes to the protection of society, you cannot scream fire in a crowded theater. And they are saying that there's a pandemic going around. People are sneezing, people are coughing, people are spitting when they're speaking. And so in order to help prevent the spread, we need to wear masks when we're in public. What would you say?
I would go at it in both two ways. Number one, I don't have a problem with their saying, we think this will protect you. If you want to protect yourself, wear a mask. And then whoever thinks this is protecting them, if they want to put, now they're asking people to wear 2 masks already. What's going to be next? 4 masks, 5 masks? If you think this is protecting people, fine. Explain to them, let them choose for themselves whether they want to wear it or not. The other answer that I have for this is that the whole humanity has been through a lot of pandemics. Never before they were asked to wear masks. So just to mandate people to cover their mouth and their breathing organs. And by the way, I want to say about this, nobody is going through kind of training how to wear those masks. You know that when they're putting, a lot of time I hear, well, it's helping when you got surgeons making a surgery, they put on mask. This is sterilizing. Well, do you know that in the surgery room they have regulations on the amount of oxygen needs to be in the room? They're going through training how to wear those masks, how to dispose those masks, how often they need to change them. None of us are going to do training. They're just telling us to cover our mouths, and if it compromises our health, which in some cases it does, well, this is for the better good. Well, we all think, everybody who's dealing with medical freedom and human rights understand we have a problem. We have a problem.
Okay, so you're saying basically the government has no right to mandate us to wear masks. They only have the right to educate us and then leave it up to our own decisions whether we want to cover or not. That's what you're saying.
I'm saying yes, and I'm saying that we've been through horrors to get us to this point that we realize that every man should have their opportunity and the right to decide how to deal with their own body. We're talking about our bodies now.
Okay, let's talk about the IDF soldiers. Recently, there was an article in Arutz Sheva, IsraelNationalNews.com, about some soldiers experiencing peer pressure and pressure from their, people above them in rank, that they should get vaccinated because the prime minister is trying to get the whole country to vaccinate. He thinks it's a really good idea. A lot of people say, no, it's not a good idea. Maybe for some people, if they want to do it, fine, but we shouldn't be forced to do it. Now, so far, there is no forcing anyone to get a vaccine here in Israel, thank God. However, there is peer pressure. So what about our IDF soldiers? Because they also, if they don't get vaccinated, they might be put in a different unit of people who weren't, and then they're separated from their friends, etc.
Yes, I hear it, and I think it's heartbreaking what's going on over there, because it started off with a lot of pressure coming from the commanders, meaning they pressured it so much that they told soldiers they would be trialed unless they get vaccinated. And it reached to the point where a father reached us, the father of a soldier reached us. We turned this into Galei Tzahal, and then they turned to the Dovut of Tzahal, the spokesman of Tzahal.
Of the IDF.
IDF, right, the spokesman of the IDF, which then announced this is that the IDF is not mandating vaccines by any way. It's not allowed to pressure soldiers into vaccinating. They cannot be forced into it in no forms and shape. None of the soldiers who will refuse will go up on trial to suffer any kind of consequences. And even after that, it's still happening. It happens. We hear in some units they say that the separation in the dining rooms, horrible things coming from what you said, peer pressure, and in some cases even comes up from the commanders. We are trying our best to help all the soldiers, and I'm calling all soldiers who hear us now. If you're being pressured, if you're being mandated, if you're being suffered by any way in regards of keeping your medical rights within the IDF, please contact us. We'll do our best to help you.
All right, and that's for parents also, if you have children.
Crowdfunding just to help in those situations.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay. And we only have another 2 minutes left, so I want you to talk about the idea that they're going to put out green passports. If they put out green passports for people who have gotten the vaccine and people who have gotten corona, and now they have their own antibodies, those people can go to public places, do what they want. But people who don't have the green passport will essentially be under house arrest almost. So very quickly about that, 1 minute.
1 minute about that. Well, this is outrageous. This is discrimination by a legal term. It's a real discrimination by a legal term, and it's unjustified discrimination. Right now, even medically, there's no basis of that. There's no logic, not medically and not human rights. And I don't want to talk about medics because I'm a lawyer. And as I said before, this is hurting us in the most valuable place, which is the personal medical freedom, the freedom to decide what kind of chemicals or what kind of things we will inject to our bodies. This is just the heart and the core of what the Nuremberg Code was made out of. And I just want to, if I have 1 more minute, I want to state something. Right now, we are in a problem of it. I think it's a social problem mainly. We're talking the way the conversation within the society is very toxic. It's very toxic. It's not even. We don't have. It's not just coming from the government. It's coming within the society, and I want to end with being very optimistic. My optimism has to do with this is in our hands. If we don't let them divide and conquer, because this is what they do, they divide and they conquer. If we don't let them do that, if we turn to each other and unite and over all our differences, vaccinated versus unvaccinated, people who scared about corona over people who thinks it's not more than a minor flu, we need to overcome this and we need to heal our society. And then in a healed society, none of this can exist. Because we as people will not accept that. We will not accept this dividation, what they're trying to do to us.
Very quickly, are you optimistic that we're going to be able to keep our medical rights here in Israel?
We will fight all the way. This is what I can say. We will fight all the way to maintain this. I think it's a free society. In a democratic country.
All right, so to
encapsulate
this, right now in Israel, masks are mandatory, vaccinations are not mandatory. that's how it stands right now, but we still want to take away any peer pressure from outside forces about vaccination, which I'm sure other places suffer from as well. All right, Dana Kowalski, thank you so much for coming on the show. Good luck with your fight.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, we should all have our own medical rights that we can choose what we put in our bodies. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Thank you for coming on the show. Good luck.
Thank you so much.
And people can follow Dana on Facebook or on LinkedIn. So when you see this show podcasted, you can just copy your name and do a search. We'll be right back, everybody. Don't go anywhere.
Shalom, everybody. Making a difference often takes just one moment and one person at a time. I am Orly Benny Davis, your show host on Israel News Talk Radios from Jerusalem with Love. You'll be hearing people talking about politics, religion, social issues, and making a better tomorrow. Join me, Orly Benny Davis, for God and Country. From Jerusalem with Love.
Wednesdays on Israel News Talk Radio.
All right, we are back here at the Tamar Yonah Show on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com, and we're going to be taking a look now across the pond at the White House and who is living there now, and that is Joe Biden, President Joe Biden. And a lot of people, half the country may not like it, but that's what it seems, at least, what is happening. And we want to take a look now at some of the things that he's doing, the people that he's appointing into his administration, and what that means to you and I, whether you're in America or Israel or anywhere else in the world. Dr. Mordechai Ben-Menachem is our guest. He's a researcher, former lecturer at Ben-Gurion University, and has authored over 70 books and 400 research papers on science, history, and more. He commentates on Mideast and world issues. Welcome to the show, Dr. Mordechai Ben-Menachem.
Thank you. I think I need to update you, though.
Okay.
I'm about to publish my 80th.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, we're going to change that. 80th book. Okay. Wow. Can't keep up with you. All righty. So, where would you like to start?
Let's start with the supposed person who is supposedly the foreign minister, the Secretary of State, so-called. First of all, it's not clear if he really is the foreign minister of the United States.
Because
if Kerry has been appointed to take point, or whatever they call it now, as a cabinet level minister for everything climate change, and according to the spokesperson, the lady who speaks for Biden, climate is their number one priority in everything dealing with foreign policy. Then it seems that actually Kerry is the foreign minister of the United States, and Blinken is blinking something or other. But if we do presuppose that he is the actual foreign minister, then let's look at him a little bit and see what it is, who this man is, and what he stands for, and how he thinks, and things like that.
Okay, but you have to translate, because for us it's a foreign minister. For Americans, it's the.
I said Secretary of State.
Okay.
But again, is the Secretary of State the foreign minister of the United States? That's a major question here. If it's Blinken or if it's Kerry. If Kerry is at a ministerial level taking care of the most important subject, and he is leading everything dealing with foreign policy, then it's not clear if the Secretary of State is indeed the foreign minister.
Okay, but what difference does it make if they're both anyway going to be following or serving at the pleasure of the Queen? I mean, the president.
Well, it makes a difference because you don't know who really is in charge of policy, who really is making decisions, who really is. When somebody's speaking to you, you need to know what the standing of that person really is.
Okay, but still, they have to take orders from the president, and the question is, who's the president taking orders from? That's the question.
That is exactly the question. We don't know. For instance, first of all, we don't know if Biden is really going to be the president for very long. I mean,
all right. Let's assume he is. Let's just assume he is.
Sorry?
Let's just assume that he is.
Yeah, I'm saying, but we don't know for how long. Clearly, he's not well, and clearly he's not really in charge of things. So we don't know how long he will be. He will be president in name, if he is indeed in president in functionality even now. But let's assume that he is for the moment. Some of his actions over these past 2 weeks now have been strange. Can I say that? Can I use that very gentle word? But let's begin by looking at this guy Blinken. Okay. The first thing, of course, that everybody reports in Israel is that, oh, he's Jewish. That's great. That's great for the Jewish state. Well, that's nonsense. Total nonsense. He's not really Jewish. He was born to two Jewish parents, but he's married to a lady who's a Catholic. He was married in a church by a priest. Clearly, if he has any association with Judaism, it's of absolutely no importance.
So they're called Ginos, Jews in name only.
Okay, whatever you want to call them, he is not really Jewish, even if he was born Jewish. Let's look at him as a person. In 2011, I'll remind our listeners that what's his name? Obama was president at the time. I keep on getting mixed up between Obama and Osama, but I'm sorry, pardon me. Obama was the president at the time, and he decided to eliminate Osama bin Laden. And Blinken called at the time, I'm reading the direct quote, "I have never seen a more courageous decision made by a leader." What does it have to do with courage? There's nothing. It's a technical managerial decision of either yes or no to eliminate a mass murderer. It has nothing whatsoever to do with courage. The statement is simply a ridiculous statement. It's juvenile. And now remember, this is a person who, for all of his adult life, has been a professional diplomat. His tool of trade is language. These are not random words that he just spelled out for no reason, and they're on his Wikipedia page. So he obviously he's proud of having said that statement, which is a statement of basically stupidity.
Repeat the statement again for our listeners.
I have never seen a more courageous decision made by a leader.
And he was referring to
Obama taking out Osama.
Ah, okay.
It has nothing whatsoever to do with courage. The people who did it, of course, had to be enormously courageous and creative, but not in the terms of a leader. It's a leadership decision. It's a managerial decision. We certainly can accept that, but describing it as courageous is simply ridiculous.
So in the last 4 minutes,
does not have control of his real thought process. He doesn't really understand human beings, and he's a diplomat. This is horrible.
Okay, so in the last 4 minutes that you have on this topic, what do you want to talk to us about?
Okay, well, that's the so-called everything dealing with foreign affairs. I mean, again, whether the State Department is the foreign ministry right now or not, I just don't know. But if we go down and start looking at the other appointments that he's made, again, I'm just looking at cabinet level appointments, ministerial appointments, whether it be the what's it called, Secretary of Defense, who was a former general and supposedly should know something. But if you actually look at the things that he said, it's a bit frightening. You look at the woman who's appointed for the post of United Nations ambassador, who has played footsie with some of the worst people on the planet. And again, you go down the list and it goes on and on and on, and none of them, all of them have tremendous qualifications in terms of prior experience. But it's like hiring people for a company, you look at their CV and you say, okay, oh, he's done this and he's done this and she's done this and she's done this. Great. But have they succeeded in what they did? Just reading a CV, a curriculum vitae, doesn't tell you if they succeeded in that position. They only held that position for whatever amount of time that they held it. It doesn't really tell you much about the person. And that's what we see with the cabinet level appointments of Biden. We don't really know what his objectives are. What we know is he's picking people that almost all of them were graduates, in double quotation marks, graduates of the Obama administration. In other words, he's not really his own man to begin with. He's picking people that are handed to him by his former boss. So who's in charge here? Is it Obama? Is it Biden? Is it Harris?
Well,
we just don't know.
The slang going around, the joke going around now is he's Joe Obama. Joe Obama. That Obama's serving his third term through Joe Biden. Joe Obama. All right. And
one thing that's known is that for the past several decades, since the end of the Cold War, the Democrat Party has been in a state of internal conflict between two families, the Clinton family and the Obama family, two crime families that are famous for their illicit actions and for the things that they've done to other people and not for the United States.
And another thing that they do is they put in their token people, their token transsexual, their token,
Well, that's the whole thing with identity politics. You have to have flags. You don't need substance. What's important is the flag and not the substance.
Yeah,
that goes behind it.
And it's a token flag also. All right, so we're going to be going to a break soon in just a few seconds, and I'd like you, if you have time, to stay on with me, because I was talking yesterday on my show on Sunday about how the government takes control of our lives and what we need to do in order to fight it, to keep our inalienable rights. And maybe you'll have a comment here or there. Can you stay on with us?
I can of it, yes.
Wonderful. Okay, so everybody, when we get back, I have a lot more to tell you. Something very worrying me that's been on my chest. I didn't mention it yesterday in the show, but I will today, and it's about false flags, and very, very, very concerning. So don't go anywhere. Just another few minutes for the show. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
This is Shai Ben-Tekoa, and each week I'll be webcasting to you from Judea, origin of the word Jew, a people besieged and beleaguered in every generation. Nazi Germany's but a memory, but in its place the world invented the phantom Palestinians as this generation's internationally authorized Jew killers. Tune in for a different slant on life in Israel, Phantom Nation, every Monday.
Hi, I'm Rabbi David Aaron. The soul basics are the most profound, the most essential, and yet often the most neglected in our education. Join me for Soul Talk on Israel's News Talk Radio and discover the secrets to love, spiritual growth, and personal power.
All right, we're back here at the Tamar Yonah Show on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. And yesterday on my show on Sunday, I was talking about how the government can come in and take control of your life. And we see that happening today. They're silencing people. They are taking away people's even bank accounts. We saw what they did to the President of the United States, Donald Trump. His bank stopped his account. How can they do such a thing? Silencing someone, how can they do such a thing? And if they can do it to him, they can certainly do it to us. And we're seeing now also from people who are in the Congress, who are in the Senate, they are now being targeted, those that went to protest the election results and that were supporting Trump. They're now targeted. And these are elected officials to the U.S. government. Again, if they can target them, they can easily target us. And our guest with us again is Dr. Mordechai Ben-Menachem. And Mordechai, I wanted to share with everyone that there's something that's been worrying me a lot, and that is a false flag attack. And let me explain to our listeners. And let me just ask just to mute Mordechai, because I see that Mordechai cannot stop doing research. That's why he's always looking up things while we're talking. Okay, so this is the thing. In Israel, when we had a huge rift in the country between the right and the left, and that was with the expulsion of Jews from Gush Katif in the Gaza area, and Sharon made this unilateral withdrawal. The country was split. And even before that, when we had Oslo and the country was split as well, what, you're bringing Yasser Arafat here, arch-terrorist here to Israel, and you're bringing in his henchmen and you're giving him the parts of the land of Israel? Are you crazy? Oh, and even worse, they're giving him guns. All of these terrible things happened. And you had half the country on one side saying, no, but we want peace, we want peace, we want peace. And the other side saying, this is suicide, this is suicide, this is suicide. It's like giving bin Laden Michigan and parts of the United States hoping that there's going to be peace because, look, we're sharing with you. We're giving you all of these things. But what happened here in Israel? There was a terrible, terrible thing that happened, and that was the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin, the Prime Minister of Israel. That was apparently done by someone named Yigal Amir. I'm not going to go into that right now. But when this happened, the entire right wing, which was half the country, maybe more even, was blamed for the assassination. It's because of you guys. You're demonstrating all the time and you're inciting hatred and your incitement, et cetera, et cetera. And the entire right wing was devastated because of this assassination that we were all being blamed for it. Not the one person who did it or the people that did it, but the entire right wing here in Israel was guilty by the left. And it took us years, literally years, for us to pick our heads up again. We were walking with our heads down. If we could have a scarlet letter on our garments, that's what it was like living here in Israel after the Rabin assassination. And since we know that the enemy of the left right now is Donald Trump, who they are destroying every way they can by impeaching him a second time, by closing his bank accounts, silencing him on the social media, there also is his movement to contend with. And they need to destroy the movement. And I'm thinking, God forbid, if they make some type of false flag attack and then blame it on the crazy Trump supporters. They're all guilty. Look what they did. And this is often used by, this is also used, often used by the left as a tactic. Mordechai, do you want to comment on that at all?
Well, there are a few things that one can say. First of all, false flag operations have always been used. It's nothing new. The left has been using them now since the middle of the 19th century, when they were basically with the diplomatic version of them was invented. False flag, by the way, the origin of the expression was in piracy. Pirates would raise a false flag above their ship so that the attacked ship would not know who was coming after them, who it was, or that it was pirates. So that's where the expression originated from. Right. If anyone's curious about that part of it, but this has been used since the Cheka, the Russian secret police during the time of the Tsars. They were the ones who perfected the concept of using false flag operations in internal affairs. So this is nothing new. Will they do that sort of thing? Obviously they will. They always have. Why would they not? There's no reason for them not to do it.
Well, it's an effective way to crush the conservatives in America, to totally castrate them for years.
Yes, you're right. It's bad. It's smelly and etc. But again, we always have to go back to P.T. Barnum. You can fool all the people sometimes, some people all the time. You can't fool all the people all the time. It doesn't work. They think it does, but let's be accurate and reasonable. If you could fool all the people all the time, the Labour Party would still be in power in Israel. They think that because they control the media and because they control all these other kinds of things, they control the people. Well, they still think that, and they still haven't come to the realization that they're fooling themselves because they're fools. Fools fool themselves. That's what they do. That's what fools do.
But all they have to do is do this, and in the meantime, while the conservative voters in America are trying to recover from this, they are strengthening their power, their grip of power everywhere. So, but
again, yes, you're absolutely correct. There's no question whatsoever that what you're talking about is real. There is no question there. The question that is there is how real is it? How much of an effect does it have? Is it something that can work for long, or is it something that's very temporary? So there are a lot of things that they're doing in order to attempt to cement their power. People living in the U.S. are talking about packing the Supreme Court and creating two false new states so that they would have a permanent Democrat advantage and immigration and blah blah blah. All these things, all of these things are presupposed to cement their power, and some of them might be accurate. Some of those might actually function that way. That's okay. They'll do all those things, but that doesn't mean that they will remain in power for all time, because that doesn't happen. It never does.
Okay, but if they're in power, while they're in power, they can do immense damage. I mean, look at the Soviet Union. Look at North Korea. Look at all these places that kill their own citizens. I mean, okay, so you can say, oh, it's only going to be in power for the next 20 years or 25 years or 70 years. But in the meantime, people are going to be suffering or losing their lives even, God forbid.
Obviously, that's true. That's true. People will suffer, and it'll be kind of nasty, and it'll be kind of very uncomfortable, blah, blah, blah. All that is true. That's correct. There's no doubt about that. But all of these things are part of an ongoing process. These things occur, and they're nasty, and they're uncomfortable, and they're bloody awful. But they're all temporary.
Okay, but I think that people, we've been through this in history over and over and over again, and I think that people need to, like I said yesterday, you need to point out the lies. You need to grab onto the truth, and don't forget what is true, because we've been so bombarded by political correctness and by what's acceptable to say and how we have to lie today in order to be politically correct and ignore the truth. A man is a woman because he identifies as a female gender. A woman identifies as a man, so we have to call her a him or a we or a they. And we have to lie. We have to forget what is right in front of our eyes and lie. And this is not a world we want to be in. And I'm not just talking about genders. I'm talking about everything, lying about politics, about how they market things that are just, I mean, I was listening the other day, who was it, talking about I think it was Joe Biden. It was President Joe Biden saying that we want to protect women's health rights. And what was it? It was an abortion bill. Come on. That's a lie. You're killing a little human being. That's what you're doing with abortion. I'm not saying abortion should never happen. Sometimes a woman needs to get an abortion because it could save her life, or for whatever reasons. Maybe she's who knows what. But to sign in these abortion bills the way that they are today, to kill human beings and then market it and label it under women's health, come on. This is a lie. And people need to remember what the truth is because we're so bombarded by everything else. Dr. Mordechai Ben-Menachem, 10 seconds, and then we have to go.
Orwell called it something very convenient. War is peace, and etc. And I won't go into it. We don't have the time, but you manipulate the population, or you attempt to manipulate the population by manipulating language. You're right. We need to be aware that they are manipulating language. But we also need to be aware that they think they have much more power than they actually do have.
All right. Well, they've got the power now, and that's why we have to keep doing the right thing and not let them get more. Thank you for being with us, everybody.
Israel News Talk Radio's chat room. Just click the orange button at the top of the IsraelNewsTalkRadio.home page, log in as yourself or an anonymous guest, and join in on the fun. You'll meet other listeners from all over the world who listen to Israel News Talk Radio, and you can make new friends. Israel News Talk Radio's chat room. It's the closest you can get to being in the studio with us.
We love listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Where can you get the inside news on Israel? At Israel News Talk Radio, we're dedicated to sharing Israel's inside story with the world by providing our listeners with news on Israeli politics, current affairs, and Israeli Jewish culture. The Israel News Talk Radio homepage also provides you, the listener, with useful information at your fingertips, with scrolling news headlines, weather, currency exchange, Shabbat candlelighting times, and so much more. Our radio programming is always accessible and on demand. We operate absolutely free of charge for everyone, everywhere. If you love what we do, partner with us now by becoming an Israel News Talk Radio supporter. With your support, you'll be inscribed on our Israel News Talk Radio Wall of Fame. There's nothing like us in the world. Be part of something great. Israel News Talk Radio. Straight talk from Israel.
If you love Israel News Talk Radio, then you'll love our Facebook page. We keep you up to date on what's happening in Israel, plus little surprise treasures that we don't share on the radio. Go now to follow us on Facebook. Just look for the Israel News Talk Radio Facebook page, and don't forget to subscribe and follow us by clicking on the like button. We post great stuff there that you'll want to share. Israel News Talk Radio on Facebook and Israel News Radio on Twitter.
News, opinion, and more. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.